I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, I just saw latest numbers here from Statistics Canada. It's not every year they do this. I think it's only about every 6 to 8 years they put out a very detailed statistics package on home ownership in Canada. And that home ownership now has been slowly dropping. Currently right now in Canada, this is nationwide, 66.5% of Canadians own their principal residence. 66.5, so it's still high, 2 out of every 3. But at the peak in 2011, it was at 69%. So it's been dropping here. And, I would probably say that's the trend here. If they do another one of these in 5 years, I think this will fall another 3 or 4% easily. And I can tell you, home ownership on the West Coast in Vancouver and in Toronto, they didn't break it down by city, is probably less than this. And it's been dropping here in Vancouver as well. I think probably 10 years ago, we were probably in and around that 65 to 70%, 10, 12, 13 years ago in the Lower Mainland. Now we're probably hovering maybe around 58%. So we're dropping here. Part of that is, of course, home prices have gone through the roof. They've been growing way quicker than what the average income has gone up. But a lot of it I would put on taxes, bureaucracy, property transfer tax is a real killer. The stress test that they introduced, what is that now, about 3 or 4 years ago, that was a real killer. Where, you're right now as I speak, to lock in a 4-year rate at the bank, you've got to qualify now at about 7.2%. I mean, just a year ago, that was probably about 3.7%. So that has taken a huge bite out of affordability here. And what that does, of course, is it just pushes more and more people into that renter treadmill. So it's great for, it's just another reason why the rich just keep getting richer with things like the PTT and all the restrictions that the government puts in and the stress test on mortgages. The other thing, of course, I've talked about many times, the Canadian banks are very difficult to deal with, very difficult to qualify for a mortgage with the big lenders. It's always been this way, but it's gotten much more difficult over the last 5 or 6 years. Try it. I always laugh at these people saying, I can go buy a house anytime I want. I'm waiting for prices to come down, and then I'm going to buy in when the market crashes. Yeah, sure you are. You don't have that spare $100,000 or $150,000 down, which is what you're going to need. Good luck with that. You have no hope. And then B, go into a bank. Go talk to a mortgage rep at TD or Royal Bank and see what you're in for. They're going to want your T4 slips. They're going to want to know how much, what kind of savings you've got. Where's your deposit funds? What are you earning? It's a gauntlet you've got to go through here. But I've talked about this many times. This is Canadian governments, federally and provincially. They've always spoke with forked tongue. They've been saying for decades here that they want to get young people and first-time buyers into home ownership because they understand that home ownership is the way to go, as opposed to renting and paying $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year to your landlord and getting nothing back for it and living like a gypsy. So they say on one hand that they want to get you into home ownership, but that's not the way they act in real life. They put all these barriers and restrictions up to try and keep you out of home ownership. The final thing I'll say on this, as I've mentioned many times before, it makes no sense to me that the government does everything they can to stifle people from owning their own home. Buying an appreciating asset, it's a tangible asset, and it's a necessity in life. You need a roof over your head. You're either renting or you're owning. So here they do everything they can with the stress test and tightening up the mortgage regulations and taxing you to death at every corner with things like the PTT, which they keep increasing. And of course, for every 2-bedroom condo built in Vancouver, it's about $200,000 going to Vancouver City Hall in the form of permits and taxes and red tape. They don't talk about that much. That's what's keeping the prices of condos up. A lot of that's going right to City Hall, which they waste away. But it amazes me that they try and keep people, or they're worried about people taking on too much debt on a appreciating asset, a home, one that will grow tax-free with the principal residence exemption and has created more wealth than everything else combined here in Canada. at interest rates that are, sure, they're going up, but you could have locked in earlier this year at 2.5, 2.6%. Variables last year at 1.9%. But hey, you can lock in a rate right now. Your true rate would be about 4.5. You got to qualify at 6.5 or 7. And it's an asset that will appreciate two ways, both appreciation long term and paying down that debt over time. You're going to create equity two ways there. So they do everything they can to stifle that. But as I've said here, they do nothing about unsecured loans, loan sharking, like credit cards, for instance. Visa right now, my Visa card, which I've never paid a cent in interest on, of course, is charging 20%. You know, interest rates went all the way down to 0, but did they ever lower your interest rate on your Visa card or your MasterCard? It stayed locked at 19.99. I see, you know, Hudson Bay credit cards and Canadian Tire and all these other ones. I hear they're up as high as 30%. 30%. Yet the government doesn't do anything to warn people about credit card debt at loan shark rates. As a matter of fact, you could go down to the local pool hall here and probably secure a better interest rate than what Visa is charging you or what the banks are charging you. It's not Visa, I should point out. I own shares in Visa, but Visa is just a toll keeper. It's the Canadian banks that make all the money, and that's why you should own the Canadian banks. They're licensed to print money when they're charging 20% interest, compounding monthly. It's crazy. They don't do anything about that, but try and do everything they can to keep you out of home ownership at 4% on an asset that's appreciating, you're using the leverage, and it's growing tax-free and tax-sheltered. It makes no sense in these days. But you see, the banks are in bed with the government, and that's why, again, I keep telling you guys, own all the Canadian banks. Put your savings, start investing into Canadian banks. It's about the safest way you can go. The Canadian banks alone have made me a millionaire, just off TD, Royal Bank, Scotia, Bank of Commerce. I own them all. TD and Royal are my biggest holdings. I've become a millionaire easily just by buying and holding those, collecting the dividends and reinvesting them. But anyways, that's the way it is. Home ownership is falling in the country. Home ownership is definitely falling probably more in Vancouver and Toronto because of things like the stress test, getting harder to get a mortgage, banks are getting really tight, interest rates going up, of course, forcing more people to stay on the sidelines in the renter's treadmill, which is deadly if you stay in there very long. That's the way it is, but as I tell you guys, all hope is not lost. The government's not going to help you. As a matter of fact, they are stifling you at every corner. They're not your friend. You need to distance yourself from the government as much as possible. These people that think the NDP is some white knight that's going to help you, you're getting fooled very badly here. Get away from them. Pay your taxes, renew your driver's license and passport, and then distance yourself as much as possible from the government. This is advice I got 30 years ago, and I've never looked back. Instead, I take control of my own destiny, what I have control of. Earning income, expanding my income, getting better in my career, paying myself first, getting that money invested, not saved. You're not going to save your way to anything. Nothing. You got to get your money invested. Your principal residence should be your absolute top priority. You should be saving for it right now if you don't own a house. If you have credit card debt, you have to clear all that before you start saving for that house. But that should be your number one goal. Once you're in, you've got the down payment and you're qualified, you've crossed a huge financial hurdle in life. You're on your way now. But you've got to take the mirror test. You've got to do it for yourself. Don't be relying on anything from the NDP or any government to help you. They're against you. If you really look at it and all the roadblocks they put up, they're not your friend. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks to everyone who continues to buy my book on Amazon. I've been selling a lot of books. It's still a #1 seller. Thanks for all my new subscribers, both on here and on my Twitter. I'll see you next week.